Good morning. My name is Brian Jones. I'm a lead architect at MadeTech, and I am going to try this morning to do a bit of a code with me session, trying to use Gemini CLI to develop a tool to manage power better than turning it off in the evening. We'll have a go at this and see how it goes. Okay, so let's get started. This isn't quite as smooth as I'd hoped because I've just gone through this, except for I recorded the wrong screen, so this may be a little bit rough. All right, so just to go back over the setup, or to start the setup, what I've done is I've created a folder that's within my projects folder. All my projects belong in the same folder, just so that I know where it is. It's all accessible there. And I've started work on a file named Gemini. Gemini is the CLI that we'll use later to do the coding. Essentially, this is a bit of a vibe coding thing, not quite vibe because go over it away. So I started with a file called Gemini.md. So this is a file that Gemini will read as it goes through goes through and does the development. And we're aiming certainly for a power manager. The rationale there is quite simple. In the UK, particularly in my house, homes with a smart meter, power is cheaper at night. It doesn't have to be wonderfully correct. It's just a case of this is all voice to text. I'll show you the highway time in a second. So on the network I'm on, the cheap rate occurs between midnight and 7 a.m. and I want to charge my MacBook, and I'm stating MacBook Pro M5 because that's what I've got, and sometimes stating what you have and being absolutely upfront with the infrastructure enables decisions to be thought about in a particular way. And the rationale why I'm doing it is to reduce energy costs and presumably carbon emissions. So from that rationale, we've got a name there. As a user of the MacBook M5, I want to charge during off-peak hours so that my energy costs are reduced. If you've worked near software developers before, you'll recognise this as a value statement. And I'll just highlight the keyword in that. No, I won't. Apparently, I'm going to delete that. So we're using the Markdown format, which means I can bold things like this. Okay, I should have mentioned that this tool is Visual Studio Code, which is free to download and use. And the extensions I've got installed, Container Tools, the Gemini Companion. I don't think I'm using many of these at the moment, except for, because I'm using Markdown, I should be able to preview the thing so you can see it in a nice, neat format there. Okay. There we go. So you can see, as a user, I want to charge. What I might do is take that bullet point and make that 3 lines, just for tidiness. Sometimes the preview does that very nicely for you. Sometimes it doesn't. I think to get on 3 different lines, you have to do that. But also maybe not. Let's not go into too great detail on that. Monitoring. So what monitoring is when you're running it, how do you know if it's working? Idiomatically just means as expected. So we're logging events as expected for the Mac OS. We're going to state that in this file so that we know that that is a name, and so that when we're debugging this and say, well, why didn't my laptop charge last night? We've got a console to log into and hopefully see what went on, what went wrong. And if it was simply that we didn't actually plug the thing in, then so be it. Okay, so in terms of deployment, again, this file isn't strict. This is just for the LLM to read and understand, and it will understand if you're a little bit loose with some of the definitions. So some of the deployment stuff is not strictly speaking infrastructure deployment, and we're not really being very strict in terms of our division of policies, but it's understandable to the computer, and they'll forgive me. They won't whinge as much as say a real developer would, if you know what I mean. I'm not calling real developers whingers. I'm just saying that some people will get very strict on that, and I would, because I'm that sort of person. So we've got some deployment notes on there. It's running on their own equipment, which for me is an M5. I'll have one there whilst I'm thinking about it. Now I tend to code with dictation, which on a Mac is set up for your accessibility settings, but you might hear a beep or two when I run this. The code will be deployed to GitHub and should be usable by a power user from there. So by power user I mean somebody who does work outside of the browser, so can understand more than the Microsoft Office suite and stuff that goes in a browser. So I would expect finance people to come into this category, as well as product managers and product managers in a development team who are not necessarily the most technical members of the team. So everybody should be able to do this unless they're really not confident with anything on a computer. If you can open code and download code using not much more explanation than I've given, you should be able to get into this. Security. In terms of security, there should be no information being written to the internet. There may need to be some things downloaded, but yeah, so let's just write that down. During normal operation, no data should be transmitted or accessible via the internet without a third-party application putting it there. So that means if you've got your console, your Mac logging set up to something like Grafana, using a third-party application, it will put it there. Other than that, it shouldn't. General operation. Okay, so how do I want it to work? In general operation, the user should install using the install script once, full stop. The application will run in the background and set the charging limit to 20% during the day and 100% during off-peak time. Full stop. A user running this application on a device without a battery should not be able to install it. Full stop. All thinking time. So what I've said there, if you're running this on a Mac Mini without a battery, the installing script should say no, bugger off. Let's have a. Do we need to think about battery health? Probably not at this stage. Transitions to charging limits should be logged. Full stop. Errors should be logged. Okay, so M series laptops have charging limits, so you can set them to only charge to 80% normally. And what I'm wanting to do is during the day change that to something like 10%, 20% in daytime and 100% at night. Why does it need to charge 20% during the daytime? It needs to have a certain level of charge so that at night time it can boot itself and charge up, and so that if in the middle of the day, particularly 4 o'clock when your laptop's been through a lot in the day, it should be able to be powered in and then power up enough for you to get on with your day-to-day tasks. Is 20% the right number? I don't know, but we can figure that one out later. Is 100% during night time the right number? Yes, because you want it to fully charge at night and then just live its life during the day. Do we need to worry about weekends? Probably not. I'm hoping users will unplug it during the weekend, but also it won't make much of a difference if you leave it plugged in over the weekend. Once it's 100%, it stops charging anyway, so you're not really using too much extra power. Let's see how that goes. How are we going to measure success? Oh, that's a different question, because we don't really have a baseline of how much energy is being used. Oh, maybe we can. Success. Think about success. The measure of success for this application is in reducing the amount of energy used in charging. Full stop. It would be when transitioning between charging states, record how much energy in kilowatt hours has been consumed by the computer. Not sure if that can be done, but we can ask and see how that goes. So what I've done here in this document is just gone through and thought about the things that need to be thought about. Now, in terms of those ilities, if we open Chrome, right mark. Mark Richards, I say Mark Richards' son. His book is quite good. But if you go to his website, Developer to Architect, he's got a resource called the Architecture Characteristics Worksheet, which has those quality aspects there. So if you look at there, we can talk about performance, responsiveness, availability, fault tolerance, scalability, elasticity, data integrity, data consistency, adaptability. Okay, so just going through these, just make sure I've not missed any. Performance is less important than readability, and I think I've written that here. So code readability is more important than code performance. The difference between taking 5 seconds to switch between states and 1 second to switch between states isn't that great in terms of user experience. The primary user experience is the ability to read the code, understand the code, and for the thing to work. The amount of time it takes to get a response to the user. We're not developing a web app, so the response to the user is in the logging. We're not really doing that ourselves, so it's not a problem. Availability, uptime of the system. If it runs in the background, we don't care, as long as it, when it goes into it, needs to be relaunched. So maybe put this in here. Once installed, the application should continue to run, including across reboots. That kind of covers that one. Scalability, we've only got one laptop, one user, so that doesn't really come into play. Elasticity, again, doesn't really come into play. Data integrity, again, doesn't really come into play. If it doesn't charge overnight, then it should be able to be plugged in during the day and have that 20% limit. It's not the worst thing in the world. It's annoying. Data consistency, again, it's not really data, but that's just integrity and consistency, not really thing. Adaptability, we've already covered when we talk about it working over restarts. Simultaneous requests, it's only one up in the evening and one down in the morning, so concurrency, it's not going to have to do that. Other systems, we're deliberately ignoring this because I don't have another system that I want to install on yet. Extensibility, extended, that's not, this isn't really going to be extendable too much. It's a single system that works in there. Deployability, we've already addressed this in talking about an install command. Have we considered uninstall? uninstalling should be as simple as installing using a uninstall flag. Okay, so that's all well and good so far. Deployability we've talked about. Testability, I'm going to skip over that. We can test it by observing it. So if we've got the logs, and if the logs are working, we can assume the system's working. It's not really as important in this type of application. Would be nice, but not really too bothered about it. Workflow, interesting. Not too fussed about that one. Configurability, recoverability. Oh, yeah, we've got configuration. So put that up here. Configurability. The system should be configurable using a single file. Full stop. Elements of configurability should include start of off-peak time, end of off-peak time, and daytime charge percentage. Okay, so I guess again this isn't very technical. We're not really into not really coding at this stage. We're just saying what we want the system to go. It's not even really user story mapping at the moment. This is just what we want our application to do. Recoverability. Recoverability. The system should be recoverable using the install script. Full stop. This should have a restart flag that uninstalls and reinstalls the application and logs the restart has occurred. Feasibility, again, all these implicit ones, we've kind of covered. I'm not really going to go into feasibility because we're using an LLM to do the code. So I'm not really thinking about the team level. This should be doable within an LLM's power. I've already mentioned security. There isn't. It's only really the logs that are generated that are the information that we need to restrict stuff to. That's not really personally identifiable. There's no. There's nothing there that we're going to be particularly interested in protecting too much. Maintainability, I've made a statement about. Okay, and observability. Okay, so far so good. I'm going to save that. Now the next command is simply to initialize this as a Git repository. I want the terminal. Just Git init. There we go. Got an empty Git thing, and then git. Right, so I'd normally do this by command line, but let's use GitHub for that. Git desktop. Okay, so you can see here I've got an initial definition. I'm not going to push this to GitHub right away. So please. So this is the chat. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to focus on Gemini. So we've got this in here. Right click, open terminal up folder, and I generally like this to be sort of half the page. There we go. Bottom. Okay, so now I've got the Finder view of the project and the terminal view of the project on the same page. So if you look at the way this is organised, there's my code, there's desktop, so I've GitHub over there, and Chrome there, so we can see the desktops I'm using. Okay, so I'm just going to go straight into Gemini. Right, what I'm going to do first, am I going to ask it to go straight for the code? No, I'm going to ask for some ADRs for the project that's going. So I ask it to read the file that I've produced and then ask questions. So architectural decision records. Type. Is that right? No, I don't want to do it. I want to do pending ones because I don't want to make decisions. I want to review it. Okay, so what this is doing now is making a list of ADRs, and hopefully they should address the things I haven't thought about or be asking questions for me to clarify. I'm just going through it like that. Okay, so having done that, it's asking me to allow things. Generally, I find that a bit of a waste of time, and you'll see as I go through that I only ask it to do really small things. I use GitHub as my backstop. So I generally go into YOLO mode, which is Control Y. So you'll see the action required just goes and just go and do it. You can see there that it's created that docs folder, and it's creating now those ADRs. Okay, so whilst it's doing that, we can go back to docs and we can start reading them. You can either read them in this format, or you can preview them to see them in the pretty format. Please remember. Oh, Swift, that's interesting. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting to use Bash. Okay, so let's just have a conversation with the thing. So In particular, AppleScript is still not doing reading. So these are installed and very readable. Okay, so I've looked at ADR01 and it's kind of gone for a single decision. I'm asking it to consider more, and some of my rationales in there. So let's see what it does with that. Okay, I'm not a bit concerned about the potentially bit there. How? So ADR, just to give context, how does with the SMC, what it's got here, the power measure of the SMC. I'm asking a question, not just telling it. In we'll think about this for quite a while, so that's interesting. Okay, so that took some time to process. So back again. Right, so it has updated that there. Now, obviously, this is where they tend to make mistakes. Now, I'm not a Swift expert, so I'm going to confirm this. And I'm simply going to confirm this, just a simple Google search. So yeah, okay, that function exists and it's part of the I/O kit, which is something I'm not really sure. As I'm not a Swift expert, I haven't touched it for years. This article from 2012 looks like it would work. So Swift. Right, so that's Acer Swift laptop, which is not what we want. BCLM. Okay, for some reason this scroll's not working. Okay, so this is saying this kind of agrees, but this is an AI generated tool. So let's have a look at BCLM. Okay, so that's not going to work. BCLM's not going to work. Entitlement enforcement. This kind of infers that something's changed in macOS 15 to disallow this. So let's just check on macOS 26. That may not work. This hasn't been maintained for a while, so that's probably out of date. The BAT one has been maintained a lot more. There we go. Adjustable for anyone from 80 to 100. Go anywhere from. So far, reading this, I'm not seeing anything that suggests it will. Oh, there we go. It will set it to 50%. CLI only, that's not a problem. So this suggests it's possible, but if it's possible, we should be able to do it with Swift. But let's ask. So we're still on ADR1. Okay, so interesting how they do that actually. So if you look at the code in there, oh, it's written in Go. That's cool. So that looks like it displays the battery status, and Apple SM is a wrapper of Goose SMC. Read. Right. So this doesn't actually check for. There's nothing there that says check for. This is just things. I think this is a reasonable ask for it to go over that. Anyway, whilst it's thinking about that, let's look at ADR2. No, that seems fairly straightforward. So we'll change that to accepted and save that. I'm happy with that. So this is about how it does the setting, and I think this question is what I really mean when I'm talking about this one here. Okay, so when it does that, oh, it's done that. No, it's not. Just when it gets there, it gets there. Configuration strategy. Well, no. I was going to change that to config put something for adjustable parameters, but this assumes that 001 is accepted. So once we've changed 001, we'll revisit that. I want it to explicitly do the alternatives consider, so let's do that there. Okay, we're talking more about a service now than an application, so the plist file is more idiomatic, more usual for a Mac service, although it is completely correct when it says it could do it in Swift. I just disagree. Yes, accepted. Even when the Swift bit is changed, that still becomes relevant, that still stays relevant. Yes, this is exactly what I've asked for. Okay, I thought this was going to be very difficult, but apparently it has. And this is nice to have, but it's done it, so let's just keep going with that. Okay, so what this is saying is I've said code files, so let's change Gemini.md. Cool. So that's shifted that decision. And this is part of the reason why it's important to go with this focus on getting those architectural decisions stated and agreed before starting the code. Right, okay. So let's just start from the top. Second, third pending. Yeah, I'm happy with that. Yeah, I wouldn't have done it in Swift if I was doing it myself, but you know what? That's why we do it this way, so that we can do it this way. I suppose in some sense it's the difference between a developer and an architect in that actually some decisions are better not made by you. I didn't make those decisions, so there. Okay. Right. Happy so far? Please write. Oh, before that, let's look at the thing. So I've made that change in Gemini. Right, so ADLs. So I've made a change. Let's reset. Next phase is to do a test and adjust. Okay, so what I'm asking you to do now is go back to the Gemini file, the instructions, and create the thing. So there you go. It's put a name on it to do those things, and we should get a README file now. So these are the instructions that we would see as a user, and we just want to make sure that these sort of make sense. So if you like, we're reading the output before the input. Okay, so it's telling you how to do the install rather than doing the install for you. Change what, make it executable. Okay, so that's about it. Configuration. Right, means you probably can't do this on our own, our internal PCs, but we can always have a chat with Aura later. But it still should be a useful exercise in doing it. Okay, it's going to set up a nighttime charge limit. Yeah, that's an interesting addition, which isn't too bad. I kind of assumed that 100% would be where you want it to be, but yep. I'm going to take that note out of there. Okay. So essentially, what we don't want to do is, if somebody wants to set their charge limit during the daytime to 0, or nighttime to 0, we don't want the power, the MacBook to completely break. Okay, so it's changed that. Just having that just to defend against a number of scenarios where the other way around could occur. If we put that in there, then some edge cases are protected against. Perhaps using, instead of saying daytime and nighttime, I think we need to specify a few things about times. Specifying GMT as a time zone is probably a bad idea because that requires user interaction between daylight savings hours and not. Okay, so it's going to go through all the files now and just make sure that those are in there. Actually, I wonder if we need to specify this at the default. Is the machine's time zone enough? So let's just write that. Okay, so just to summarise, so far what we've done is written the Gemini.md file to define our first thoughts in what the system is and should do. We've then created these architectural decision records to check the LLM's understanding of what we're wanting, and we refine those to get a better and clearer picture of what we're wanting to do. And once we've done that, we've written the README to try and get the user manual, if you like, just to make sure that what we're presenting to the user is consistent. The next step is to commit that so that we're all in line. So you can see there's been some change to, this is the GitHub desktop, there's been some change to this ADR, but that's fine. Guardrails. Okay, so So I'm just going to go back to this that thing and what I'm not seeing in here is any need to. Okay, so no, that does require 2 sudo. Interesting. Yeah, okay, that's fine. It said no, which is good. Let's just check there's no changes. It has made changes on that. Okay, interesting. So it has considered, it's made changes, and it's saying so more consideration. We're all good. Let's publish that. Oh, I just thought one more thing. I think I mentioned it earlier. What we don't want is people running it on OS X, but on devices without a battery. So oh, it's probably a security ADR if anything. But let's ask. Yes. Oh, that's a good consequence. Okay. So looking at that ADR 08. Yep. Let's accept that. Oh, we should have dates on these things. Okay, so this is taking a bit of time. I don't know why it's deleting my pending and accepted, which is just annoying. Actually, it's not, because this is a code review, therefore I can take the opportunity to show you what to happen when the thing does weird things. Look on the right side, Ryan. Look on the right side. Okay, so right, so pending, accepted. Okay, so I can simply right click on things that it's changed and it shouldn't do. So yeah, I suppose this points out that GitHub is still and the Git process is still a very useful part of the development flow, in that it gives you a good tool for checking checking the output. So yes, whilst I use the YOLO mode, the output is checked here. So I'm saying, go ahead and I will make changes as necessary here. You need to make sure you save before you do things. Let's do it naughty, accepting my own ADRs. But this is a personal project. Maybe there's another status to be used when you're using AI, is it should maybe go from suggested to pending to accepted, because really it should be the development team that accept an ADR with product input. But here I'm acting as the development team and the architect and the product person, so all three roles go into there. So maybe get your AI to put the ADRs into suggested mode, so they can be put onto GitHub as accepted, and when they're agreed between the tech lead, the tech lead and the product lead, that's when they should be accepted, not necessarily at this stage. So solo coding just makes things slightly different in that way. Okay, do it. Do you want to go do it? Yeah, do it. No. Okay, so prepare for GitHub. So we're going to use GitHub Actions to just check things in as we go in. So we're still at the stage we've got no code in here. This is all spec. I'm not sure how useful integration tests will be in this, because it's actually quite it's a simple program, but also not saying it's easy. It's just a very small service. Okay, so here we go. We've got the README on the front. There's a GitHub workflow. There's the ADRs in there, so we can now see those in the way they should be looking at. So there you can see this in GitHub. So from this point on, we're going to be working in code. So let's do it in GitHub because it's more visual. So new branch, and we're going to call this first run. So now we're working in a branch, so we're using the PR thing. I'm just going to say do it. So we've done a lot of preparation. The simple do it should enable the LLM to go and do its thing, and now it's just going to chug away. And once it's chugged away, we'll go and see what it's done. Okay, so that's happened. We've got a source folder here with a Power Manager in there, with some Swift Cody files in there, and in Visual Studio it's asking me if I want to install an extension for Swift, because I've never really used Swift before, which could be a problem, but we'll deal with that if we need to. And to install Swift, it just says do this in a terminal. We've got a terminal. I'm just going to do Command T to get a new version on that, and let's see if we can install Swift. I'm going to go ahead and download that and install it. Hopefully. Okay, so that took a little bit of time to install, and I have this swiftly.pkg file just there. So I'm going to delete that, but it does remind me that actually there is something I've missed, and that's to add a git ignore. So So hopefully what that should do is, you won't see it in the Finder, but you will see it in here. So that's really small. As I said, not a Swift developer, but that's kind of interesting that it's so small. So this is a file that tells Git to ignore things when it uploads and downloads stuff. You can see there the VS Code folder that takes VS Code stuff is in there, and that's a really small git ignore. So it's generated this code for me. Let's have a quick look through now. As I say, Swift is not my bag, it's not my language. I'm Python, C#, and a few others. Bash, doesn't matter, but Swift is not one of my list. But what I can see here is this is a class. Started at main.swift because I think that's the entry point. This is the app class that should be the entry point into the program. Run, I think, yeah, there you go. Starts the main application loop. Oh, I don't like this. Run loop, check every 1 minute. The reason I don't like this is because of the granularity. So if something's running every minute, it takes a little bit of processing power every minute. So in my head, what's going through is, can that be 10 minutes or half an hour? Would that still be reasonable? If it was 29 minutes past midnight and it hadn't switched over, would I be upset? Probably not. I don't think the laptop takes will take the full 7 hours. So maybe if we change this to every half hour, half an hour in seconds, 60 times 30, 6 times 3 is I think 1,000. Yeah, there we go. 30 minutes. There we go. It'll even update the comment for me every 30 minutes. Let's say 20 minutes, because so it's 20 minutes. 1,200. Somebody let me know if I'm wrong. So what this does is it's got a timer, and every so often it's going to go tick, and this is the initial tick. So it'll go tick and run this function here, and then run loop current run. So what's run loop? I'm assuming that's a standard thing that comes from Foundation. So let's just check that. It doesn't really appear to be log, so let's just have a run loop in Foundation, see if that's a keyword. There we go, processing threads run loop. So generally not thread safe, not too worried about that. I wonder if there's a better way of doing it rather than in a loop. Let's just ask. So instead of running every 20 minutes, maybe if this service only runs that tick at the times of where it's affected, although I suppose there is a question there as if the configuration changes in the meantime. Okay, updated to include dynamic scheduling. The tick function now runs on startup, performing energy tracking and mode transitions, and then calculates the optimal time for the next runtime, the sooner of a 20-minute energy sample or the next scheduled peak-off-peak transition. Can we change the yeah, energy tracking was a bolt-on anyway, so it's a thing. So let's what I should have done. Oh, failed to save. So what that means is don't save it and then reload it. Right. So this is the Power Manager app and main Swift func run main application root run loop current run. Okay. So current is okay, so set that 6-hour interval up here rather than in the loop. This is the piece that tracks whether in off-peak or peak. I'm assuming this is like the class initializer, so this is the bit that initializes the app. So the config path is there. It will load the config from the config. I wonder if this has the config loader. Config codable config loader. Right, there we go. All right, so okay, that makes sense. The config is a struct. You can see here that that's as it should be. I'm going to change the peak charge limit to 20 and the off-peak charge limit default to 100. I think it was more clear in the results, but those two do need changing. Config loader, what this should do, oh, there you go. There's the logger. So the logger set up the config loader. It's going to try and decode the data, the JSON data, and then config.self. So if I put my thing over there, JSON decoder. So I'm expecting a JSON decoder to be in here. Not seeing that there. Yeah, import foundation and OS log. So it won't be an OS log, it should be in foundation. Decoders perhaps. If only there was a search function in here. No, it's not a fantastic. Steve Jobs would be spinning in his grave, or maybe not. Not really sure what XPC is. Foundation data types. Not really finding much here. Let's just search Google for it. So Swift JSON app developer. Foundation class. Oh, okay. Interesting. Couldn't find it by going through the IA, but you can do it for a search, for the provider search. Right, so decodes a value of the type you specified decoded from a JSON object. Decode. So the type specified is that config, which is struct of the type from data. That's the data there. Contents of URL, file URL with path, and that path is path to the thing there. So it's trying to get that JSON file and then decoding it. It's doing the time zone validation there. Then it's doing the range check. So if between that range contains that limit, that's fine. So I'm assuming you can't, from there it looks like you can't set like 20.5 as a charge limit. Or maybe you can, maybe it's worth changing that. So peak charge should be low, about 20. Off peak, high, so like 100. Off peak must be bigger than peak. Yep, that's good. So that's doing the validation of the config, and it will pass a warning. I'm not sure if it's going to actually stop it. And that's a... Right, where's that validate called? So let's just say here, so config dot swift line 35. So config swift is the name of the file, line 35 is the line within. So that's set in the context of the question I'm asking, and then the question. It's important to add context when you've got a question. Now I've said I should have done it twice, and I didn't do it last time. I said I'd do it, so let's just add that. So what I'm going to do first up is put that git ignore in. So add. The reason I'm putting that in first is because that includes that file there. So as soon as I add that, we should see that that goes, but it's not. So let's add that to the git ignore and work out why it's Swift version's in there. I'm pretty sure that should be. Leave it. Config JSON. Yep, all good with that. install. Now, this is a bash file. Okay, so it is what it is. I will commit it as it is and then read it in a second. Again, I've made some change to this, but I'll commit it as it is and read it later. So we're just reading through things at the moment and checking them. So again, cool, so that one does that. No idea what that guard keyword is, but I'm assuming it's a guard. Kind of makes sense. I've not seen that in any other language, but that's okay. Type, yep. Now, we're not sure if this is going to work because that SMC controller BCLM may be limited to 80%. But we can see that. Let's just make sure that this has got the thing. So SMC Swift. So just make sure that it logs things. The SMC controller. SMC error right failed. Okay, so you can see that what happened when I clicked on that is that it showed me where the thing is actually done. So that calls this, and it's okay. So that ampersand, the ampersand character there, I believe, is a pointer. So these two variables are pointed to in here. So it says get your value from that place there, and get an output it to that place there, which is how C-like languages tend to work. I'm happy to be corrected on that, but I think that's just sending those two values there by reference, so that it can get that. And I think that in-out keyword there says it's readable and writable, which I'm not sure. Okay, right, seems legit. Right, so this class here controls the SMC, the controller on the laptop, and it looks like it writes to and reads the stuff from it. And there's nothing in here that is particularly concerning. I want to know really what that guard keyword does, but I'm confident that it is just a watch out for thing. So that's, I think, is just Swift error handling. It's like very much like very similar to Go's, which is kind of nice. So it's like if this is true, then that's fine. If it's not, do handle it. But let's Google that. So else is required. I'll transfer program control outside the yardstick. Closing scope. So I think what that means, whenever you see, you have to have the S, and that throw transfers control elsewhere. So that's quite a defensive way of coding, which is it's not very similar. It's similar in concept to Go error handling. Build it in. Okay, so nothing I really want to change there. Power monitoring, we should have added this on later, but we didn't. Okay, so this is just saying that those things should exist. And if they do exist, then that's cool. Now, power is, yeah, the formula's right. They use voltage times current. I think that's incorrect. I think it should be. No, to lie. It is divided by a million because voltage is in a thousandths of a volt, current is in a thousandth of an amp. So a thousandth times a thousandth is a millionth. So that is right. I thought it was going to be in my head. I was going the other way, but that would be incorrect. Right. So it's okay. So it's going to log it every hour. I'm not sure if that's going to be useful, but let's let it go and see how it works. I think the calculation is correct. It's just I'm questioning of its user usefulness. But that's not a big problem at the moment. It's not going to stop us trying it. Okay, so app run. Start the app. There's a config. Check that where's that getting app? Okay, the app equals. So I'm assuming the let assigns that Power Manager app to the app keyword, and if it can't assign it, then it exits with a 1, and then app run. So the Power Manager app is this thing here, and it is running that there, and it goes into that little messy bit there. Okay. Right, well that's interesting. Let's have a look at the changes we've made. Looks like we haven't made any changes. Let's close any. Right, what do we need to do? Oh, install Dash. Never like that output. MacBook models. I suppose technically it should be OS X models, but I'm struggling to think of a device where that would matter. Okay, so main script logic. If the argument in usage, so that's this, just explain how to use it. Okay, Swan in install. Oh, okay, so it requires you to put install in. That's not quite what I was expecting, but that's fine. Okay, some minor changes there, but that's fine. We can. I've not saved them. Okay, I don't really want to just run this as is. What I want to do really is compile it and make sure it compiles. So what compiling is making the code that you've written, and it's human understandable, into binary code for the computer to run. So let's ask that. Okay, so I'm wanting the installer to compile the Swift code into a folder, but that folder should never get committed. So let's add that. And even with terrible spelling, that works, or will work. Build. Okay, that's a good word for it. All right, it's just getting argumentative there, but we can deal with that. So let's just test this by going. Okay, so it's giving me that usage one. Right, you see there that it's got that folder. It's going to compile it. And there it's built the Unix executable file, and it's built it fine. So that gives me confidence that the code has compiled. So let's go into this. That DS store can bugger off. We've added that in there, and so that will discard. And discard that added. Okay, so what it's done there is it's moved the install down a bit so it can fit the build in. So let's go and read that back in code. Install dosh. That make directory command there. Let's just check that it's idempotent. So if I rerun that, yeah, that's fine. And if I delete the compiled, let's just make sure that goes back in there. It does. Happy days. Happy days. Right, so that kind of works. Okay, so okay, so let's do this thing. Right, I'm going to delete this because I don't expect it to be there when other people start. So let's launch control. Right. I've installed it, so I should be able to see it. And com user Mac power. Great. Hey, hold on. Hey, right. Mm-hmm. It doesn't look like it's there. Can't remember the exact command, so let's ask the. So, can you add? Expecting to be grep something. Grep. Oh. it is there. I just missed it when going through. Maybe it wasn't in. Okay, so it's that it requires sudo to do. Okay, that's cool. That would have worked if I'd have had the sudo there. Interesting. Right, cool. Learned something today. I'll forget it soon, but I've learned something. Right, so going back to that, what I want to do now is to check what my battery charge levels to. Okay. Yeah, I left it on last night. That was part of the reason I thought to do this. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so probably using two terminals, you usually get a bit confused. Actually, what I just want to do here is go into the console and just search the logs. So it's not showing me in the console because I'm not a local admin. It's showing me some stuff here. So in 360 minutes, that's 6 hours. That's the next thing. What I'm not seeing here is that it's set the SMC controller to anything particular. Okay, so I mean, where are we at? We've made the app, we've launched the app, we've built the app, and we've deployed it locally. That is as far as it goes. And yeah, this is in a language I'm not familiar with, but I mean, being familiar in a number of other languages makes this familiar enough. So yeah, that's as far as it goes. Not sure if it's working. Let's run it and see if it does stuff. And yeah, that'd be cool if that works. I shall, yeah, I'll come back and let you know after a day or so if it works.